Welcome back. I'm Kevin O'Keefe. At issue today, some teenagers turn to God for answers while others turn away. Islam is the fastest growing religion in Canada. There are about 750,000 Muslims here, and it's the youngest. The average Muslim is 28. That's compared to over 40 for most Christians. So does that mean following Islam makes you young and popular? 17-year-old Tasneem Barakat joins me in the studio. Welcome to the show,
Thanks
Tasneem.
for having me.
So, does following Islam make you young and popular? I mean, do you find that in society today it's generally accepted, or is there still some challenges?
There's definitely some challenges. Actually, there's a lot of challenges because, I mean, we aren't exactly at a point in time in society when religion is seen as something that's attractive. I mean,
especially, I guess, as a young person. Right?
The media does not push religion in any way. When we listen to music, all we hear is, you know, girls and drugs and
sex,
alcohol, and
yeah.
So
you don't see yourself reflected in any of that, I suspect.
No.
Tell me about. I want to talk a bit about 9/11. How did that? You had some direct experiences as a result of that, especially because, and let's be honest here, you're visible.
Yeah.
People look at you and they say, "Oh, this is a Muslim." I mean, how did 9/11 affect you directly?
Well, I'll give you an experience of mine. Once I was walking down the street in my neighborhood, and somebody who I actually knew in my neighborhood yelled out to me and told me to go home, you terrorists.
Wow.
And
so how did that make you feel?
Well, I was quite offended, but I knew, I mean, the first thought that came to my head was, you know what, Canada is the only home I know. I was born and raised in Canada.
So if you were to go home, you already are home.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, if Canada isn't my home, then if I were to reply to him, I would say it's not your home either. This is Indigenous land and it's Native land, and who are you to tell me to go home?
Right. Now, you're wearing the hijab. Explain to me why that's important for you to wear, the scarf you're wearing.
Wearing the hijab, basically when I walk around, I'm a living, breathing embodiment of Islam. Even though, you know, I'm not the perfect embodiment. No one is. I'm a human and I have flaws. But to other people, to people who see me and don't know me, I am representing my religion. So
now that, I would suspect, would be rather challenging.
It is.
Because if you asked me to represent my religion, I would be like, no, thank you.
Especially because whatever you do, they're going to think that, you know, oh, all the Muslims are like that.
Yeah,
they
did you see that Muslim girl do that?
Yeah, exactly. So.
But why do you take that on then?
I feel like it protects me not from others, but from myself, because I'm a teenager. You know, at the end of the day, I'm a teenager, and I have temptations, and just like everyone else, I do get influenced by the media and my peers. And sometimes when people try to influence me into doing things, I think back and I'm like, oh, hold on, just pause. I'm wearing a hijab right now. If someone sees me doing this, what kind of a representation am I going to be giving to Islam? Why would I blemish the name of Islam in order for my temporary enjoyment? So
that's tricky, though. Good for you. There are people who will also look at you and say, yes, but because you have to cover, you're somehow oppressed. How do you respond to that?
Covering is my choice. My parents never, ever forced me to wear the hijab. It was always something that I had to, you know, it was a work in progress. It was just something that I wanted to do, and I had my highs and lows. I had times when I was like, you know, I really don't want to wear the hijab.
Really?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
wow.
It's hard because I was in 7th grade when I wore it, and you go from not wearing the hijab and, you know, talking to everyone normally, and then when you wear the hijab, they treat you differently.
In what way?
Not in negative ways. I'd say they respect you a little bit more, and, you know, a lot of people, they know your boundaries, and they don't, for example, if they were to ask me to come out partying and drinking, they'd know that, you know, I'm sort of not into that.
So in some ways it takes pressure off.
So it helps me in that way.
You were living in Toronto for a long time, and you mentioned you were born here, and then you went to BC last year on a student exchange program?
No.
Oh,
my dad was working in British Columbia,
okay.
And just to keep him company and just for the experience, I decided to go with him. And it was it was an interesting experience. I'm glad I made the trip, but I pretty much left Toronto, which is a cultural mosaic and a concrete jungle, and I left.
And you're surrounded by other Muslims in Toronto,
exactly.
So you're supported in what you do. Yeah.
And I was immersed in a society where it was populated by about 7,000 people, and it was predominantly
very
small, and it was predominantly Caucasian, and there was a large group of natives who lived on a reserve nearby, and that was difficult for me because not only have they never really seen a Muslim before, they've never seen a Muslim who wore a hijab who was young, except and all they've ever seen actually was people on TV, and those are really distorted representations of Muslims usually.
So what happened to you there?
So my very first day, I was new, I was scared, I was, feeling a little insecure. I went to my very first class, and before I was even able to say anything, my teacher came to me and she was like, "Hi, my name is Mrs. Blank.
Right.
I know you're an exchange student. Don't worry. Everything will be fine. Don't you worry. The ESL class is just down the hall. If you ever need anything, just come to me. Put up your hand. It'll be fine."
So she didn't even ask you to speak.
I didn't even say a single word to her. And I was looking at her really confused, and I was like, I'm from Toronto. And she's like, "Oh no, but where are you from before that?" I was like, No. I was born in Toronto. I was raised in Toronto. If you want me to write an essay right now, I could. I know English perfectly fine. Like, I don't need any help. And she was really embarrassed, and we had some laughs. But, if it were someone else, I might have been a little more offended. Just because, it's not her fault that she didn't know. She lived in a really small town, and, if you go 3 hours out of Toronto, it's sort of the same.
But does that, I don't know, if someone asked me that, I would be very offended. It just seems very generous of you to have that opinion of somebody who, after, I'm sure you have to explain that, with the terrorist remark, and do you get tired of that or angry at all, or
I have to admit, as a human, sometimes you do get angry, and you're always tempted to reply in a proportionate manner to how they spoke to you. It's
very offensive.
Exactly. But because I mentioned that I am representing Islam, I do my best to try and take the moral high ground because I do not want to blemish the name of Islam because of my personal flaws.
Right.
Of course, sometimes I do slip and I might say something that I shouldn't have said. But
one of the things I want to ask you to get into before we run out of time is you play a lot of sports, which I think is really interesting because I think a lot of people, they play sports, but you did have, and before we started taping, I had read a story about you. I didn't realize it was you, about playing soccer and some challenges you had around that. Can you quickly talk about that?
Well, playing soccer...
Because you're a big soccer player. You play a lot of soccer.
Yeah, I do.
And you're taking kinesiology in university. So your sports is a big part of your life.
So when I was younger, I was on the school soccer team, and we went to a different zone, and we were going to play a soccer game against them. And as soon as the referee saw me on the field, he stopped the game and said that something was wrong, and they were all talking, and I was like, what's going on? But anyway, in the end, he had a problem with the fact that I was wearing a hijab. And he thought that because I wore a hijab, it would be a hazard to the other players on the team. And that was very confusing to me because, as I said, my hijab is not going to,
Yeah, it doesn't look very dangerous.
It's really not going to grab you and, pull you away from the ball or something. Whatever he might have thought that could have happened. And he had a problem with it, and I was unable to play that game. So it's things like that where people are sort of Islamophobic, where they think that a part of your religion is something that might be a hazard to life, even though it has nothing to do with it. I
don't want to spend this entire interview talking about how terrible it is and how hard it is to be Muslim. So tell me, let's end it with some of the rewards. Why is this, and given all the challenges, and you've been very honest about it, ultimately this fulfills you. Why? What fulfills you about your faith?
Honestly, everything. you know, like I mentioned, we have our highs and lows, but when I'm at my highs, you feel this connection with God. When you're in prayer, prostration is something that not only Muslims do, Buddhists do it as well, and just, you know, feeling close to God and having all the benefits that I have, where in Islam, for example, we don't drink, and many of my friends do drink, and when they do drink, sometimes they justify their actions by, you know, a common line you might hear is, oh, well, I was drunk, so, you know, I'm going to justify doing whatever because of the fact that I was not in my normal state of mind. So I feel that Islam really protects me from things like that, and I know that I can have fun, I can have an enriching experience and a wholesome experience, and Islam does not prevent me from having a good time in my life.
I think that's a good place to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate your
Mm-hmm.
honesty and your
Thank you.
to say. Well, up next, a young man breaks free from Jewish jail. Stick around.